Hi, Matt Brown here, and this is my presentation over tort liability. Tort is a legal term describing a violation where one person causes damage, injury, or harm to another person. The violation may result from intentional actions, a breach of duty, such as negligence, or due to a violation of statutes. In education, it means that the teacher is held individually liable for the student's injuries and risks. So intentional tort is something that you purposely intend to do to another person that causes that individual harm in any way, such as battery, assault, false imprisonment, trespassing. Anything like that would be intentional. The first of the 5 court cases I found was Frame versus, I believe it's pronounced Comake, and I apologize if I'm wrong on that. Eighth grade student Casey Frame misbehaved several times throughout the class period and during a test and was asked to leave by Dr. Comake. Comake went to physically remove Frame from the class by grabbing him by the arm and escorting him. Frame happened to lose his balance, fell backwards, hit the podium, and then went ahead and fell on back to the blackboard. Frame then filed lawsuit of battery and assault against Comake. They claimed the attack was unprovoked, negligence. They also talked about negligence in the case, but it's often characterized as the failure to exercise a standard of care that a reasonable, prudent person would have exercised in a similar situation. But the court found it necessary for Comake to physically remove the student from the class. Although he did commit battery, the courts agreed that his actions were justifiable because of how disruptive Frame was being. In my school, I believe that individual meetings would be set up with the teacher and the student. To get both sides of the story like normal. An accident report will be filled out by the teacher, and an incident report, I guess. I don't think the school would have disciplined the teacher either, just because of how disruptive the student was continuing to be and how disobedient they were being. And again, just like all incidences that result in an injury, a report would need to be filed. A proactive measure would be to be familiar with any school policies concerning these matters and how to deal with these types of situations in the class, and calling out an administrator to your classroom if problems like that happen to arise, just to kind of cover yourself. In terms of ethics, integrity is a great ethic principle to have in this situation, because even though the teacher probably knew he probably shouldn't have grabbed the student, he knew he was doing what was right to protect others. The second court case I found was Flanagan versus Canton. In the reading, 5th grade student Brendan Flanagan and his class were sent to change after PE after being told the importance of following directions. They were kind of horsing around a little bit. In the locker room, a student happened to push Flanagan from behind, resulting him to fall against the bench and cause some pretty serious physical harm. The teacher remained in the gym during this time, speaking to another student. They weren't in there to monitor. So they filed lawsuit, and the court ultimately said that they sided with Flanagan in this one because the students were misbehaving on the day of the incident. The teacher owed a greater duty to supervise the students, especially because their conduct was foreseeable. There was a great chance that they were going to misbehave in the locker room after what they were doing during PE class. So the court sided with Flanagan on that one. An incident report immediately would need to be filled out. Administrators would need to be called, and you need to talk to them as soon as you can. We have similar instances that have happened in our school. Not as physically bad, but we've had locker room issues before. But I believe our students would begin to having teachers stay in the locker room no matter what. So if it was me, like one of my sports teams, I need to be in the locker room during that time, in the office or something. I need to be a physical presence in there. Now, if it happened to be females in the class that were being disruptive, I would then ask a female staff member to step in there for me and just help monitor. If the class was very rowdy, I would have monitored and made sure my presence was in the locker room, and to help prevent any more instances like this from occurring. And again, I would ask a female staff member to step in for me if it happened to be the girls. Professional competence would be an appropriate set of ethics for this one. Teachers know what their responsibility is inside and outside the classroom. For teachers, I know it's easy to get lazy. Maybe not even lazy, but it's easy to be negligent and assume everything's going to be okay, just to give yourselves, a couple seconds of, a breather. If a professional competency is followed, it eliminates the possibility of any issues happening. The third case I found was Johnson versus the School District of Millard in 1993. First grader Robbie Johnson was playing and singing the song London Bridges with his other classmates during music class. The students were leaked up by the arm with two other students, and as they skipped around, they swung each other, and they were warned about swinging too hard and messing around. After their directions had been given, the instructors let them play on their own. Johnson claimed that he was being swung way too fast and roughly while caught in his classmate's arm. He was then let go during a swing and flew into the bookshelf, and he split the top of his head open, and he ended up requiring 50 stitches. So whether or not the instructor was watching during that time was still undisputed. They just didn't know. Johnson testified that they were writing. Johnson testified that they were writing. The teacher was writing on the blackboard at the time, so he claims the teacher wasn't watching. The trial court held that the teacher's mere instruction to first grade children how to play a game without direct supervision during the early portions of the game was negligent supervision. The court awarded Johnson for medical expenses, permanent disfigurement, and for pain and suffering, which the school went on to appeal later. So in that situation, again, first things first, make sure the kids are okay. Contact administration, fill out an accident report, and then I know our school would have the student sent to see a physician. I believe that administrators would remind teachers their responsibilities during class and how dangerous it can be to turn on your back even for a couple seconds with such young students, especially with a new game or a new concept. They need to be closely monitored. As a preventative measure, it would be crucial for the teacher to keep a watchful eye on a student as they play games where an injury is a real possibility. And then in terms of ethics, I think accountability would be something a teacher would need in this situation. Parents and administrators put these students in your care, and they entrust you with them. So in order for you to be trusted, you got to be accountable. You have to do your job. You have to be reliable. The next court case I found, Peterson versus Baker in 2007. Jonathan and his friend Willie Landers, they arrived late to class, sat down, began talking loudly and disruptive, right off the bat. Baker, who happened to be a first-year teacher, asked Landers to leave the room, while his friend Jonathan thought she was talking to him too, so he got up to leave as well. She told him to sit down, and he refused to. Baker claimed as they were going out the door, Baker tried to stop them by putting her arm in the doorway to not let him pass, but she claimed that Jonathan pushed her out of the way when she continued to refuse to let him leave, and she also claimed he hit her hand out of the doorway when she was attempting to stop him. She then stuck her hand out to stop Jonathan from hitting her. After he pushed her, she kind of stumbled a little bit, and she went to put her hand out to kind of protect herself and ended up hitting his neck. After leaving, this infuriated him. He left, cursed at her, and walked out the school. He returned later and went straight to the administration. The principal claimed that he could see red marks on his neck. The plaintiff claimed that the teacher administered corporal punishment by grabbing Jonathan's neck in this violation of a substantive due process right, bodily integrity, under the 14th Amendment. They also went after the principal for not having their teachers properly trained to deal with these situations. The court ruled that the force used by the teacher was not excessive. Jonathan was being repeatedly defiant and aggressive toward her, and he pushed her. No evidence of medical treatment required or visible marks on the student. And I know a couple of my pictures have been pretty maybe exaggerated. This one, obviously, it wasn't that, but it does depict battery. And this one I wanted to talk about before I move on too far. I know this this does deal with negligence. Obviously, this is a very extreme case of it, but it does show that two people with their backs turned while something else is happening is an example of negligence. So, and back to Peterson versus Baker. The teacher would immediately need to go to administration to explain the situation. After incident was filed by the teacher, they would bring in the student and get their side of the story. Administrators need to make sure their staff is trained to deal with these types of situations as a proactive measure. And this was just honestly a simple mistake in communication. Jonathan thought she was speaking to him, it's important for an educator to remain calm, reiterate to whom she was speaking to, and that I think that would have de-escalated the situation. And the last court case I found, Tatum versus Orleans Parish School Board. Mr. Tatum was employed as a temporary teacher at Walter Cohen Senior High. At the end of the school year, the principal of the school, Leroy Gray, sent a memo to an administrator in the Human Resource Department concerning the plaintiff's assignment. In its letter, it stated that he served as school site substitute for this many years and a science teacher this many years, but it is recommended that Mr. Tatum not be returned to the school. Thank you for your consideration. So Mr. Tatum instantly filed lawsuit due to defamation of character and tort against New Orleans Parish School Board. The court ruled that it was not defamation, and Mr. Tatum appealed. Well, what they said was, in this case, the statement consists of a memo concerning personal matter. The assignment of a teacher for the next school year, it was merely a recommendation that the plaintiff not return to the school without giving any reason. So administrators of my school would have requested, hopefully they would have requested a sit-down meeting with the individual. The case to me seemed like he was just not clear in his memo and his reasoning and caused one big misunderstanding. I feel like the individual should be given a performance review where administrator could give examples of their displeasure in their work, if there are any. This eliminates anyone from getting blindsided. In terms of ethics, there needs to be better communication between administration and staff, so someone needs to step up and be a leader, particularly when administrators are dissatisfied with their employees' work. They need to express it to them so they can start working on these issues. And here are my resources. Thank you.